Let's get started. Good morning, everyone. We are in Perek Vav in Sefer Nechemia. And if you remember the story, even though we took a week off last week, but if you remember the story, Nechemia has been building the walls. The pace of the building is fantastically quick in the sense that we'll see at the end of this Perek that we talk about it being 52 days. The construction, it may not be actually 52 days in from beginning to end. We'll see that as well. But things are moving quicker, and they're moving quicker than Sanballat and his associates thought they would be moving. They thought they would be more successful at halting the progress regarding the building of the walls. Why they oppose the building of the walls, there's a number of different theories to it. Remember, they had way back when approached the Jewish people and asked the Jewish people if they could participate, and they were rebuffed. The reason they were rebuffed is because of the fact that they really weren't viewed as legitimate members of the Jewish people. They are the people who converted because of the fear of lions attacking them after Sancheiriv had done a population exchange. In terminology of halacha, they were the Gerei Arayot. Today, we refer to them as Samaritans. The Samaritans were, again, if you think about it once again, were presented here as enemies. The Good Samaritan is actually a strongly anti-Semitic term that, even though it has come into normal use as somebody who wants to do something out of the goodness of their heart, in the way it is used in the gospel, it's in contrast to the evil Jew who wouldn't help. There was a good Samaritan. But that good Samaritan himself, here we don't see any of the good Samaritans. There is another piece to the puzzle as well. Building a wall around Yerushalayim is an act of separation. And so even though that act of separation was necessary from a security perspective, it was controversial. You can think about it in some ways as when in Israel they built the wall from a security perspective, but some people looking on the outside, not looking from the security perspective, say, my God, what are you doing? You're segregating. You're putting things above and beyond anything else. And by the way, there could have been some of this opposition coming from the Jews who lived in the northern part of Eretz Yisrael. There were Jews who were left. Those Jews who were left, we'll see it especially when we get to the next parak, were intermarried, were fully assimilated in the culture. Building a wall around Yerushalayim is again separating them as well. All of that just as background to the beginning of Perek Vav, where we read, Vayhi asher nishma l'Sanballat v'Tovia ulegeshem ha'arvi uleyeter oivenu. Okay. Nechemia is speaking in the first person when the leadership, the three leaders are Sanballat, Tovia, and Geshem. We've encountered them before. And all the rest of our enemies, those enemies could have been, by the way, non-Jewish and perhaps some segments of the Jewish people, as we'll see at the end of the Perek. Ki vaniti et hachoma, that I had built the wall. V'lo notar ba'paretz, and there is no breach in the wall. The wall is completed. Gam ad ha'etahi, even though at that moment there was still dalatot lo hamadati b'sharim, I still hadn't put up the doors into the gates. So the wall was finished, but the doors weren't completed. So there still was a small amount of hope, as the Malbim points out, that they would be able to overcome. They would be able to, stop this separation, this attempts of Nechemia. Vayishlach Sanballat v'Geshem elai lemor. And so they sent to me, Sanballat and Geshem, and Tovia was probably part of this, but the two people in charge would seem to be these two. They sent to me the following message: Lecha, let's go. V'niv ada yachdav bakfirim bevikat ono. Let's get together. Okay, we want to get together at a place called Kfirim that was in the Ono Valley. Today, this place most likely is Ben Gurion Airport. It's right there in that space, right where Ben Gurion Airport is located. Now, their plan, obviously, was to do something evil to me. They wanted to propose to get together. They want to do something evil, as Rashi understood. Rashi says their plan is to kill me. In other words, they say, hey, let's get together. And if I were to go, they would kill me. And so I sent back to them messengers saying, I have a lot of work. This building of the city is a big piece of work. And as a result, it's necessary. The Mitzudat David includes Esek Gadol v'Hechrech. It's absolutely necessary. V'lo uchal leredet. I'm sorry, can't go down and hang out with you at this moment. Lama tishbat hamelacha kasher arpeha. Why would you want this work to be stopped if you go ahead, if I weaken my hand from going? He's saying, if I leave, it's not going to get finished. And then go over to meet with you. Vayishluchu elai kadavar hazeh arba pamim vashiv otam kadavar hazeh. And they sent this message to me 4 times. And 4 times I gave them the exact same response. Nechemia is being consistent. Nechemia is pushing back at their attempts to stop things. He understands what they're doing. Vayishlach elai Sanvalat kadavar hazeh pam chamishit. But Sanvalat goes ahead and sends a 5th time the same message. Et naro vigeret ptucha biyado. And he sends his servant, he sends the Na'ar is not necessarily a lowly servant. Na'ar can be a person, it can be his chief of command. But he sends this person who's close to him, and he's sending it Igeret Ptucha. Now, an Igeret Ptucha, fascinatingly, is different than the other 4. What is an Igeret Ptucha? It's an open letter, literally. It's an open letter. But when you do an open letter, what's happening? You're letting other people read it. You're letting other people see it. What's his thinking in this point? The simple thinking is, as the Dat Mikra suggests, he wants to push Nechemia, you want to force his hand, because he's coming off as a very, very reasonable request. If Nechemia goes ahead and turns it down, it's demeaning it. It's diminishing Nechemia, saying, what, you don't want to get together and have a conversation? What's the matter with you? It's pulling him down. Now, the other piece in terms of the Igeret Ptucha, just to remember in this, the Mitzudat David explains, is an Igeret Ptucha, literally, when it talks about an open letter, in those days, letters had seals on them. Now, a letter without a seal means it was able to be opened and closed and read it anyway. But a letter without a seal also, in a sense, doesn't identify to the same level of significance the person who is sending them. Whereas if you have the person's formal seal on it, that formal seal makes it a very official document. Yeah.
It calls to mind the kind of open letters that I can read in the Wall Street Journal from the tobacco company addressed to the entire population. And again, okay, when I say it calls to mind, the purpose of such an open letter is to put on
A pashkvil.
You know, everybody should see it and to garner popular support. Because
right.
Until now, it's just been a governmental thing.
And they're not always bad. You know, I was I was getting ready when I was getting ready for Yontif, and I was cleaning up for Yontif a little bit. I have right after President Trump was elected president, Rabbi Brander and I, Rabbi Brander, Kenny Brander, and I were spearheaded an effort. We actually had 2 letters, open letters, that we wanted to have published in the New York Times. One if Hillary Clinton made it in, and one if Trump. There were 2 different nuschos, 2 different versions of them. And the version that was published was because Trump won, was President Trump, about recognizing Yerushalayim as the capital of Israel. It was co-signed by 100, 150 rabbis. I forgot already how many. It was co-signed, and it was a full-page ad in the New York Times. Now, we could have sent it directly to the president. In fact, we had his staff, his incoming staff, the transition staff, approve the text, so there shouldn't be anything that would be embarrassing to him. Okay, and we could have done that, but you do an open letter, because you want to put a little bit of public pressure. It can be public pressure from your perspective. It was good public pressure from our side. I don't think we had any impact on his ultimate decision, which was to recognize Yerushalayim. Okay, but made us all feel good. Okay, except for the bill we got for the New York Times full-page ad. But the reality of this situation is you do that, and an open letter is not a bad thing. An open letter can be a good thing. It's the way to use public opinion. Now, when you're dealing with negotiations, though, between heads of state, open letters violate protocol. Nechemia was the Pasha of Yehuda. Sanballat was of the north. To send an open letter was a violation of that protocol. Okay, so it's a little bit different than your typical open letter, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, those are fair. This is definitely devious. Sanballat, well, I don't know if it was devious or we will call it Machiavellian or we'll call it really good PR. Okay, whatever it is, trying to pressure, and this is where the Daf Mikra is, trying to show him up because it seems to be a reasonable request. And it's only because he feels that, that he understands that his life is in danger if he does this, that he's turning it down. Jim, you had a point?
No, I was asking who we are, which is he from what Torah Stone?
Now he's at Torah Stone, yeah. Then he was still at Yeshiva University. Now, to keep on going, Katuv Ba, in it was written, Bagoyim Nishma, Vigashmu Omer. It's already public knowledge. It's been heard all around. Vigashmu is actually Gashmo, it's from Geshem. It's they say Ata v'hayehudim choshvim limrod are planning a rebellion. Was this open letter was already written in a style saying, listen, the non-Jews is being sent by Sanballat, right? Now, Geshem we know is not Jewish. Sanballat is identifying as part of the Jewish people. He's a Samaritan, but he's identifying. He's saying, listen, you and the Yehudim at this point is not just Jews, but the people in Yehuda, the people who have returned, who are living in the area around Yerushalayim, are planning a revolt. Al-Kena Tavoneh Choma. And that's the reason you're building a wall. Va'ata hovel lahem lemelech. And you are planning to be their king. Kadvarim ha'eleh. And he says, ultimately, this Rashi says it's missing some words in here, but it's this Kadvarim ha'eleh should have really been Katuv ba Kadvarim ha'eleh. This was the text of what was in this open letter. It was a portion of the text itself. Now, Sanballat making this claim against Nechemia, we'll see. Is he coming off as someone who's trying to be helpful, or is he coming off to be someone who's challenging him? We'll see the rest of the text, and we can weigh in on it. He says, "V'gam neviim hemanata likro alecha v'Yerushalayim lemor." You've also put up people, neviim. Now, we don't see neviim, prophets have been put up. And so the Mitzudat David actually says, these neviim are not prophets, but they're neviim are spokespeople, like Niv. A saying, people you've put up, PR guys saying, Melech biyuda, ve'ata yishama lamelech kadvarim ha'eleh, and you're saying this, that this is going to happen, that you're going to be king, you're putting it up, this is going to be heard to the real king. Kadvarim ha'eleh ve'ata lecha v'nivatza yachtav. Let's get together and let's figure out how we're going to solve this problem. Now, the Malbim says, in other words, this open letter that Sanballat is sending, listen to the way the language is. Sanballat is sending it, and he's saying, in the open letter, everybody else thinks you're plotting a rebellion. Let's get together and let's resolve this. Let's figure out how we're going to save the situation. So Sanballat's tone here is in a very devious manner trying to be his friend. Okay, I know you want to overthrow the king, and it's really going to be complicated, and I don't want you to be killed because of it. Yeah.
Is he saying, I know you want to overthrow the king, or it looks like you want to? overthrow
Well,
the king?
he says, if he says, they think, okay, what you're doing, they think.
That's that appearance.
But when it comes to the question of him being king, he's accusing him of already putting up people. You want to be king, but you're going to be in the future a king, and you're putting up this Nevi'im. You're putting up spokespeople to proclaim it. So it's not just it's being misperceived, but there are certain things you're doing that then will have the consequences. So it is a very devious open letter. It's a letter that can't be ignored. You can't just go back and say, sorry, I'm too busy to write back, which is basically too busy to get together, which was basically his previous response. Ve'eshlecha elav lemur. And so Nechemia now sends another response. Lo niyeh kadvarim ha'eleh. What I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, never such things never happen. Asher ata omer, what you're saying. Ki milibcha ata boda'am. You're making them up. This is all a lie. This word ki is not because, but rather it's an ella. Okay, rather this comes. It's all being made up. Yeah. I don't know. It would seem to be that there needs to be some kind of public response. We don't, but he did send back this note to him. It was an open letter. He sent it back. It could have been open back. We don't know. Ki chulam meyarim otanu lemor. Why are you doing this? Because all of those non-Jews, okay, or all of those things you're accusing us of. The Rashi says it's all of the non-Jews, all of the Akum. The Mitzudat, the Dat Mikra says it's all of those things that you're claiming. They would cause us to stop the work, and that's not going to happen. And what actually is happening now is the antithesis of what you had hoped would occur, but rather you've given me the motivation to work harder. Yeah.
Is he denying the gist of the letter in the sense that he's saying, I am never imagining myself as king, or is he denying the original premise, which is call it by Goyim Yishma?
Well, no, he's doing both.
And he's saying, no, nobody thinks that. Everybody knows what we're doing.
Well, going back to the previous pasuk, that means this is all made up. This is all your imagination,
Including
and
everybody's afraid of us.
and the reason, right? And the reason all this tumbling is happening, okay, is they're afraid, right? They're afraid, and nothing you're going to do is stopping us from doing it. We're not rebelling. Remember, he actually had to rebuild the walls. He had government support, financial support. When he left, Artaxerxes gave him money, gave him the letters to be able to get the necessary materials. So this was not something. Sanballat was trying to change the narrative, and the narrative he was using in our terms was a false narrative. Okay, and his false narrative was one that was going to not only stop the building, but the way to stop the building is to stop Nechemia. Nechemia is the threat, not just the building, because Nechemia is the person who came in. If you compare it to Ezra, for example, who had been earlier in this case, when you compare it to Ezra, you realize right away, wait a second, Ezra had been there for years before, and we didn't have this kind of challenge. Well, Ezra didn't take this kind of initiative. Ezra wasn't this powerful political leader who was able to really rally the troops and get everyone together. He arrives on Rosh Chodesh Av, and within a few days, they're starting to build the walls. And we're going to see that really, according to Chazal, according to Chazal, the walls are going to be built by Rosh Hashanah time. They're going to be finished. This is a massive undertaking that he did in a way that no one would have ever imagined. He's a real threat. So what happens next? Vanivati Beit Shmaya ben Delaya ben Mehetavel v'Atzur. And I went then, at that point, this is Nechemia speaking again, and I went to this person, Shmaya. I went to Shmaya's house, and Shmaya was Atzur. Now, Atzur means he was confined. Thank you, good word. He was confined, okay? Why was he confined? Well, we'll see Shmaya was identified as a person who was a prophet. Before people received prophecy, Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who spoke directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But other than that, before prophets were able to receive prophecy, they underwent some preparation for it. They went ahead and they had to prepare themselves. They would be mitbodadim. They would sometimes seclude themselves. They would find themselves into some state of dvekut, of closeness to God, and they would receive the dream or the vision that appeared to them. Here, according to the Ralbag, that's specifically what was going on here. The Ralbag says Shmaya was presenting himself as being a Navi who was getting ready for the Nevuah. Now, the Ibn Ezra goes a step further. What the Ibn Ezra says is that if a person who was a Navi wants to receive Nevuah, the prophecy, they really have to remove themselves from the hustle and bustle of daily life. They have to really reach that level of spirituality. And that's the case. But the question is why Nechemia goes to him. And so the Malbim actually says that Shmaya wasn't well. And Nechemia went on a Bikur Cholim visit. Okay, he went to see Shmaya. He was by himself. Atzur in this case, he was in bed. He was laid up at that point. Exactly why he goes, we don't know. Then it could be he was going to Shmaya, whether it's for advice or inspiration, or it could be he was going there to perform a mitzvah. Vayomer. And so Shmaya tells him, Niva'ed el beita Elokim el tocha hechal. He says to him, listen, let's get together, you and I, in the Beit HaMikdash, inside the Hechal, inside the building of the Mikdash. V'nizgerad daltot ha'Hechal. And then we will lock the doors behind him. Now, why does he want to lock them? Ki ba'im lahargecha. Because Sanballat's trying to kill you. So this is a good place of refuge. There are no walls yet on the city. There are no doors on the city walls. You need to have a place to secure yourself, your position. Let's go into the Hechal and let's do it. And in fact, they're going to try to kill you tonight. Yeah.
Technical question, tell me I'm wrong. Non-Levium.
Well, so that's here. That's going to be the issue.
Okay.
That's coming right up. In other words, Shmaya is proposing something to him that, again, sounds for his benefit.
Yeah, but then if he's telling him to do something that's halachically incorrect, then he is totally suspect.
Perfect. Va'omeram, and I responded to Shmaya, Ha'ish kamoni yivrach, would a person like me, in my role, could I go ahead and I run away? Malbim says, am I going to show people that I'm afraid? And of the threats of Sanballat? What kind of leadership is this? It's a fascinating piece. If you remember, just yesterday in the Parsha, Le'enei Kol Yisrael, that Moshe gave a bracha to Yoshua, Le'enei Kol Yisrael, Chazak v'Yamatz. So I saw it in two different places. The earliest one was in the Meshech Chochmah. The Meshech Chochmah said, wait a second, what happened to being an anav, being a humble person? What happened to being close to God? Why chazak v'yamatz is the bracha? And he says, because when it's leinei kol Yisrael, when a leader is standing in front of the flock, in front of all the Jewish people, what he has to show is an attitude of strength and fortitude. And here Shmaya is telling him, let's go run away. Let's hide. So he says right away, can I go ahead, a person in my role, go ahead and run away? And by the way, am I a person who can go into the Beit HaMikdash and survive and live? In other words, the first kamoni is a kamoni of greatness and strength. The second kamoni is, I'm not of that stature. I'm not allowed in there. Okay, because I'm not the Kohen who should be inside there. Loavo, I can't go in there. Rashi says, very simply, that I can't violate a mitzvah, okay, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kohanim go in the Hechal. Nechemia is not a Kohen. The Ralbag says that ultimately this proposal of Shmaya and we'll see Shmaya was hired for this. Okay, this proposal of Shmaya was a proposal that Sanballat had come up with because Sanballat wants to try to figure out a way to weaken Nechemia. Now, how do you weaken Nechemia? You go ahead and you can do one of two things. Well, Sanballat figured out let's do both at the same time. One, say, your great leader is afraid of me. Okay, he's hiding. Number two is your great leader is violating Torah. He's hiding in the Beit HaMikdash. And so if we would do such a thing, this would diminish Nechemia. And so Nechemia knows he can't do it. And therefore he says, I realize God did not send him. Now, how did he realize God didn't send him? Because God doesn't send a Navi to tell you to violate the Torah. And by telling him to go inside the Heichal, I realized that's Rashi. And even though, it is a case of a potential pikuach nefesh, such a thing, the Mitzudat David says, if a case of pikuach nefesh, someone is chasing after somebody else with a knife, okay, I'm going to kill you, and they're running through the streets of Yerushalayim. Then the guy goes and runs on the Beit HaMikdash, and the guy keeps on chasing him, I'm going to kill you. And then he's still chasing after him. That person, as he's trying to escape, it's real pikuach nefesh, could escape inside the Heichal. He would not be held responsible for escaping. But that's not something a Navi would recommend. That's not the plan a Navi would come up with. Let's violate this, even though it may be pikuach nefesh, there are other options. When there are no other options, okay, Mela. But Nechemia realized, okay, v'tovia v'sanbalos charo. Okay, I realize, okay, that this Navi, okay, I'm being told that there are these Nevi'im who are talking about me. I've been accused of guys up there, and now I have this. These Nevi'im are not real. These Nevi'im are people who are being put up by Tovia and Sanballat. Leman Sahurhu. Okay, he is a hired hand. Lemanira v'seken v'chatati. He wants to make sure that I'll be fearful, I'll be afraid, and I'm going to do what he wants him to do, and I'll sin. And then they'll be able to use it as a shemra, as a libel against me, as something bad against me, laman yacharfuni, in order that they would ultimately shame me. What would be the shame? The Ibn Ezra says the shame would be that, look, Nechemia is really afraid. Okay, or says the Malbim, look, Nechemia violates the sanctity of the Beit HaMikdash. So Nechemia says, I'm not listening. Zochra Elokai. So he turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he says, listen, my God, remember, L'toviyahu l'sanvalav k'ma'asav eila. I want you to remember what they tried to do. V'gam l'noadiyah hanaviyah, and also remember to Noadiyah hanaviyah. Remember what this prophetess Noadiyah says. Now, in the article, how do they translate it? And also what? They have prophetess there? What's her name? Okay, Noadiyah. Okay, good. Now, it's interesting. We have a big problem. And it's a big problem, even non-observant scholars, even the secular scholars have these issues with it. Why? Because Noadiyah is not mentioned anywhere before, and it's like a passing reference. Oh, and also Noadiyah and Aviyad, those are the same thing. And so as a result, they look at older sources, and in the Septuagint, it says Noadiyah Hanavi. It says in the masculine form, not Nevi'ah, not prophetess, but prophet in the Septuagint. Okay, the Targum Shivim. Okay, so that's interesting. The Greek translation of the Torah has that. In addition, the problem is like this. If she wasn't mentioned yet, why all of a sudden would you mention her? But as a result, what happens, and this is really, the Ibn Ezra points this out, and others point this out, Noadiyah Nevi'ah is really Shmaya. That same Shmaya who we had before, the same prophet. Why would he be called, in this case, okay, Noadiyah Hanaviyah? Noadia, if you remember, because his proposal had been, okay, he said, Niva'ed, let us get together. Okay, let's get together. This is back in Pasuk Yud. Vayomer Niva'ed el Beit Elokim. Noadia is the one who made the proposal to get together. But still, it says Neviah, a prophetess, and not a prophet. And so the Ibn Ezra points out that when you look in Kohelet, and we know Kohelet was not a woman, Kohelet was a man. Nevertheless, in Kohelet, you'll find Amra Kohelet. That sometimes when the name has a feminine sounding form, sometimes the verb will be a feminine verb. And so the Ibn Ezra solves this process by saying, this is the same prophet we had before. We're giving this prophet a nickname, the meter guy. Okay, that one. Okay, the one I wanted to meet. Give it the nickname. And once I have that nickname, it does impact the verb. And the modern scholars prove to it is the Septuagint. Because once you see in the Septuagint, it says Navi, works real well. Right. The real problem we have here is, who is this person? And all of a sudden we have a prophetess popping in. Now, that's one way of looking at it. Yeah. Good. Okay. And so the Ibn Ezra gives a second answer. The Ibn Ezra's second answer is there was a prophetess named Noadia. Okay. And the reality is, if you look in the text, it says Vigam Noadia Neviah. Vigam and also can be understood as, and in addition to Shmaya, there's another prophet. Now I could say Vigam, if it was all one prophet, that he also did. Okay, but the Ibn Ezra says it's entirely possible, and the Ibn Ezra says this latter answer that there was this prophetess was a Nachum. He says that's really the right answer to it. The Malbim says, bottom line, there were two prophets that we know of who had been hired to betray Nechemia, and there were others as well. That this was all part of Sanballat's scheme to undo him. Uliyeter Nevim Asher Hayumi Arimoti, and all the rest of the Nevim who were trying to scare me off. Vatishla Machoma. Nevertheless, yeah, I'm sorry, Naomi.
I think this, when you mentioned Tuvia and Sanballat, he doesn't mention Shemaiah, so.
Well, because Tovia, remember, there are three big guys on the thing, two people who identify themselves in some way as Jews, Sanballat and Tovia, right? Tobias or Toby. Okay, Tovia. The two of them are the Jewish, and I'm using Jewish in quotation marks. Tovia, obviously from the name, we see that there was some Jewish connection. Sanballat was of the Northern Kingdom and considered himself a legitimate Jew, even though we didn't. Those two were the leaders. These are the various tactics he used. They used the tactics of the letters, the closed letters, the open letter, the prophets that they hired. And so we don't necessarily need to elevate Shmaya or Noadia as to that level of leadership. They were just part of the tools that were in his toolbox, a devious toolbox. So the building was finished on the 25th day of Elul. The wall, I'm sorry, not the building. The wall was finished on the 25th. Now, how do you figure out the 25th? It was the Chamishim U'Shnayim Yom. It was 52 days later. Now, if you take the dates, you figure out they showed up Rosh Chodesh Av, they came to Yerushalayim. There were 3 days back from Perek Bet where Nechemia was encouraging them, get things going. They go ahead and then they have an additional 27 days in Av, another 25 days in Elul. Okay, that's 52 days. It works out nice and simple. Okay, so there, right before Rosh Hashanah, this wall is finished. The Ibn Ezra, however, has a different explanation. And his explanation, it was 52 days since Sanballat had sent the letters. In other words, the wall really was already finished. They just had to put up the doors. It took 52 days. Now, the reason why we would go that route is to fix Chomot Yerushalayim. is not something you can imagine taking only 52 days. It's miraculous to have been done in 52 days. It doesn't have to be that there were 52 days, in the total reconstruction. It's entirely possible that this project took longer. And it could be that it was finished 52 days after after the attempts to try to stop it. Knowing construction nowadays in Yerushalayim, 52 days to get the doors up would have been miraculous. Okay, so the reality is we don't know where the 52 days, most of Chazal say the entire project took 52 days. So,
Like the foundation of the previous?
yeah, it was repairing what had been done before, but still, if you think about, first of all, they were under attack. This was under attack. It's a massive area that had to be covered. And so it could be, it's within reason to say it could be, and it's within reason saying, but it's pretty iffy on that. Yeah, Jim, you had a question?
Depends how many masons you have.
Depends how many masons you have. 100%. By the way, this is totally off. The Masons, okay, they claim that they were part of the building of the Beit HaMikdash. That's where you have those, the people who are Masons. Okay, the Grand Master, well, those other things of the Masons. Last piece of the parak. Almost, yeah. Yes, there's a lot of doors going up. Yeah, one set of doors, I think they can manage 52 days. Okay. Vayehi kasher sham'u kol oivenu. And when all of our enemies heard, vayir'u kol hagoyim asher svivotenu, and all of the peoples were afraid. Now, Rashi actually says, and they all saw. I think that I would assume in the Art Scroll it says saw, right? The reason I'm saying we're afraid is the Minchat Shai points out that this word vayiru, if you notice, there's a dagesh in the yud, and as a result of a dagesh in the yud, the way it should be pronounced, that the little dot in the yud should be pronounced vayiru. It's a shva na. It's a shva that starts a syllable under the resh. However, if it according to Rashi, it should be vayiru, where it's a shva nach, vayiru, which means they saw. It was the whole point of this debate between Rashi and others in the translation is whether or not there's a dagesh there in the yud. If there's a dagesh, which our text has, it would seem to be they were in awe or they were afraid of the Jews. Okay, but we have two different traditions on it. One more time to go over the pasuk. Vayi kasher shamu et oivenu. When our enemies heard vayiru kol hagoyim asher svivotenu. Now, poetically, by the way, lishmoa v'liram would seem to make to hear and to see. Poetically works. To hear and be afraid is not the same poetic symmetry in there. Vayiplu ma'od beinehem, and they fell much in their eyes. Rashi says they fell down, in other words, they were afraid. The Ralbag has a fascinating approach, and he says this word vayiplu is not from the shorish nafal nun pei lamed, but is from the shorish pei lamed aleph, pella, wonder. And as a result, the reason why they were so scared, they fell down, is because they saw this wonder that in 52 days, such a project could have been completed. And they recognized that this was because of God, that this work had been done. The Jews have some powerful ally on their side, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gam bayamim ahem. Now, Pasuk Yud Zayin until the end of the parak, according to the Malbim, is actually an introduction to the next parak. According to the Ralbag, this actually is a piece of information that should really have been simultaneous with everything else that just occurred. Often when we have in things happening simultaneous, but not really within the dialogue, the narrative, what we'll do is we'll have what's called a mamar muskar, a parenthetical kind of comment. Here it's divided differently. Yeah, no, 100%. Ted Zion, in terms of the parshiot, in terms of the division of paragraph, Pasuk Yud Zayin is a continuation of Pasuk Tet Zayin. Okay, and so that would seem to support the Ralbag's approach. That this is more of it's hard to say a Mamar Muskar is a parenthetical comment when it's the end of a chapter. It's more like an appendix to the chapter. Here's something else that was happening at the same time. Well, it's not the end of the story because we're going to get more to the story. But what's happening here, if you look, Gamba Yamim Ahim, also in those days, Marbim Chorei Yehuda Igroteim Chota Toviyam. There was a lot of communication that was going back and forth by the leadership of the Jews, the Bnei Chorin, the higher echelons of society, that were going back and forth to Tovia. Now, Tovia is one of the bad guys. It was Sanballat and Tovia. Vasher Tovia Ba'od Alehem. And he's going back communicating to them. And I was, wow, Nechemia is fighting this battle with Sanballat and Tovia. His own people have relationships with him. Ki Rabim B'Yehuda Ba'alei Shvualo. Because there's a lot of people there who had covenants with him, had relationships. Ki Chatanhu L'Shechania ben Arach. Because he was a son-in-law to Shechania. Shechania was one of the first families that came back with Ezra. V'Yonatan beno, and his son Yehonatan, lakachet bat Meshulam ben Berachia, also married into Meshulam's family, okay, which also was a significant Judean family. Gam tovatav hayu omrim lifanai. And Nechemia says, by the way, they were always talking up to Nechemia how good he was. That's Rashi. Interestingly, Metzudat David says, no, they're always talking about how good Tovia was to Nechemia to say, you should be like him. Okay, to try to create this, to undermine Nechemia at the same time. Udvarai hayu motziim lo igrod shalach Tovia liyiraini. And they were betraying my private information to Tovia. And Tovia ultimately was sending at the very same time letters to me to scare me off. Now, where are the letters Tovia are sending to scare him off? Says Rashi, those are the letters that Tovia and Sanballat were sending, first the 4 letters, then the 5th letter. Those are the letters that Nechemia is referring to. So according to Rashi, which follows, and Ralbag, okay, all of this closing piece really is going parallel, but is adding some more color to the conversation, to this understanding. It's not a battle of the good guys against the bad guys. It's a battle of the good guys against the guys who are kind of muddied and the bad guys. There are these people in the middle. There's a large segment of the population, especially the higher classes, who had intermarried with the people who we didn't consider Jewish, who were betraying Nechemia's efforts to those people because of the relationships they had. And those relationships were familial, and they were probably also, so the Shvuah we're talking about are probably also business relationships that existed between them. And so this makes it very, very complicated. Now, the reason why this could be color for what was, explaining how Nechemia felt somewhat that he was on his own, and also explaining the dangers he was facing. It could also be an introduction, because we'll see in the next parak, we're going to have those final things where Nechemia is going to be doing his takanot, where Nechemia is going to start making the necessary decrees, which are going to strengthen the efforts against intermarriage and against assimilation and all of the other takanot he's going to bring forward. That's going to be Perek Zayin, which is a new piece. But if I can say, hey, wait a second, he's watching all of these muddied relationships, all of these things that are going on with people who should be enemies, who people don't understand. Well, let's do something about it, is why this, according to the Malbim, is the introduction to the next parak. Yeah, Joel.
The word question in Pasuk says to Tata Vodaham.
Wait, which pasuk? Ochet, yeah.
The word Vodaham is this is not familiar to me, but how does that be fabricated?
Well, bidui, we have in modern Ivrit. Levadot, we have, it's the same word, we have the same word in modern Ivrit. I don't know if we would, huh? It's to lie, to trick, yeah. Yeah, I don't remember. Ah, okay, yeah, so you have that, okay, Levadot, we do it. Yeah. So now, the next week is Erev Sukkot. I think we're gonna take a week off. The week after that is Hoshana Rabbah, I think.
No, next week, oh, yeah.
Yeah, next week, the next week is Hoshana Rabbah, we'll take a week off. The next week we'll be back, so we're gonna take off 2 weeks in honor of Sukkot. Everyone will have enough work to do, okay? And everyone should have a wonderful, a meaningful Yom Kippur, Gemar Chatima Tova, a wonderful Yontif, and we're gonna move on and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
What, Rabbi Matanki?
Oh, Ilana, yes,
Hi, do you have a moment? You could turn off the recording though.
I will turn off the recording. Yes, hold on a moment, let me turn off the recording. Hold on, Ilana, hold on, I have to figure out how to do that, okay.